Today's lesson is asking for directions. Hi, everybody. My name is Roger.
And I'm Mike.
Sometimes I get lost in Taipei, especially if I try to go down to Wanhua or over to Bansha, because I always get lost in those places. And if I want to find my way back home, I need to ask for directions. Excuse me, can you tell me how to get to the nearest MRT station? You might find this kind of conversation useful if you get lost yourself in some city overseas.
Absolutely. It's very important if you're overseas to know where you are, and if you can't figure it out on your own with a GPS, maybe your phone has problems in another country, then you need to be able to ask questions and ask for directions from other people. And in the same way, if you're hanging around the Taipei 101 area or a popular tourist area like that, it's a great feeling when you see a bunch of tourists standing there with a map, kind of looking around, where are we and where's north and how do we get to there from here? It's a wonderful feeling to be able to go over and say, hi, can I help you? Are you lost? Can I give you some directions and send them on their way with more information? That's always a good thing to do. So let's ask for directions and get some directions as we visit lovely London.
Okay, so we're looking for a spot in London. So we've got Stan asking for directions from a man on the street. So let's listen to their conversation right now.
Asking for directions. 1. Looking for a spot. After visiting Westminster Abbey, Stan is trying to find the British Museum. Therefore, he asks a man on the street for directions. Pardon me, I was wondering if you could tell me how to get to the British Museum from here? Well, you could walk there from here, but it would take about 30 minutes. Oh, I think I'll be pacing around quite a lot inside the museum, so I'd prefer to avoid that. If you take the underground, you'd have to transfer from one line to another, and that could be a bit complicated for a tourist. You could also get there by bus, but I'm not exactly sure about the best bus route. You might have to ask somebody else. Thank you for the information.
大家好，第一部分我们可以看到动词 pace 指的是走来走去，或是因焦虑来回踱步。例如 Lena paced around the hospital's lobby, waiting for her grandma to wake up. Lena 在医院的大厅来回踱步，等待她的奶奶醒来。或者 Jack is pacing the floor in the airport because he just lost his luggage. Jack 在机场内来回踱步，因为他的行李刚刚遗失了。另外，这个字也可以当作名词使用，意思是步调或是速度。像是 The pace in New York City was much faster than what Judy was used to. 纽约市的生活步调比 Judy 过往习惯的步调要快得多。或是 Stephen's pace at work started off good, but he slowed down a lot this month. Stephen 的工作速度一开始很快，但这个月他慢了很多。接着我们看到单字 route， 这个字也可以念作 route， 它是名词，意思是路线或是航线。举例来说 That route will get us there faster, but the other one has better scenery. 那条路线会让我们快点到，但是另一条的景色比较美。又或者说 The bus route passes in front of my house. 公车的路线正好经过我家门前。另外，这个字也可以当作动词，它指的是规划路线或是安排程序。我们可以说 The new automated phone system will route inquiries to the appropriate staff. 新的自动电话系统会将询问转给适合的员工。也可以说The police officer routed traffic away from the intersection where the accident occurred. 警察引导车流避开发生事故的十字路口。
Okay, so again, you're looking for a certain place, you're looking for a spot, especially if you're in a city and you want to find, say, the museum or a restaurant or someplace like that. So you're looking for a special kind of place. And after visiting Westminster Abbey, Stan is trying to find the British Museum. Therefore, he asks a man on the street for directions. So, yes, indeed, Westminster Abbey is a famous spot or location in London. You can only spend so much time there, and you need to move on to your next destination if you are a tourist. And, of course, a very popular tourist destination in London is the British Museum. But Stan doesn't know how to get there, so he needs to ask a man on the street for directions.
That all makes sense, of course, because Westminster Abbey and the British Museum are a fair distance from each other. They're certainly not across the street or around the corner. So Stan begins this conversation very politely, approaching the man and saying, "Pardon me, I was wondering if you could tell me how to get to the British Museum from here." Wonderful sentence there. You can memorize it, write it down on the back of your hand or something like that. I was wondering if you could tell me how to get to blank from here. And in that blank, just put in whatever place you're looking for. And beginning it with a pardon me or an excuse me or a sorry to bother you is a very nice thing to do, especially in Britain, where people are probably a little more polite than you might expect them to be in other countries. So that's a wonderful way to ask for a little bit of help. And the man seems very willing to help. This is a British man, someone probably just walking down the street, a pedestrian, someone who looks like they live there. And this man says, "Well, you could walk there from here, but it would take about 30 minutes. I'm doing my best sort of middle-class British accent there. Not too fancy, not too cockney. So you can, well, you could walk there from here. Yeah, you could, but it would take about 30 minutes. So that's useful. You know, if you got time, if it's a nice day, might be a good walk. But if you're in a bit of a hurry, the answer sort of gives you the idea that bus, the tube, the underground, the MRT might be a better option.
Indeed. So it depends on the person. They may not mind walking such a great distance. Or if you don't want to walk that far, yes, indeed, you should probably take some sort of public transportation, or maybe you can get one of those bike shares or something like that. Who knows? But here's what Stan says. "Oh, I think I'll be pacing around quite a lot inside the museum, so I'd prefer to avoid that." Now, here we've got the word pace used together with the preposition around. To pace around a place just means to kind of stroll around a place, to walk around a place. And this does happen when you're in a museum. You're going to be on your feet for a very long time. I know myself, when I'm in a museum, my feet get really, really sore from standing so much. And maybe that is what Stan is thinking. He's going to be walking around this museum for a long time. So he thinks that he'd rather not walk for 30 minutes because his feet will probably be very sore by the time he gets to the museum. And then he'll feel even worse if he's standing around looking at all those great works of art in there.
That's a very good point and a very wise decision by that man. You often forget how quickly your feet get tired when you're a tourist. So the man makes a suggestion that will get him there a little faster and also with less physical effort. The man says, if you take the underground, you'll have to transfer from one line to another, and that could be a bit complicated for a tourist. So the underground there, notice it's a small U. Sometimes it might be a large U because this is what they call the MRT system. In New York, it's the subway. In Paris, it's the metro. And in London, it's the underground or the tube because, of course, it goes down a tube-like tunnel. But generally, when we talk about it as sort of a transportation system in the city of London, it might be common also to see it with a capital U or even a capital T for tube. What they're talking about is the MRT. And, of course, as we know in Taipei, if you're taking the MRT a longer distance, you definitely might have to transfer from one line to another. To transfer is basically to shift from one way of doing something to another way of doing something, to change. You can also say you'd have to change from one line to another. If you're going up to Danshui and you're in the sort of Xinyi area or something like that, or maybe on the Zhengshao area, you'll have to transfer at Taipei main station from maybe the blue line to the red line, that kind of idea. So you have to get off one train and get on another train, which as a tourist you have to be a little bit aware of. You might get lost or take the wrong train or something. As the man says, that could be a bit complicated for a tourist. If something is complicated, it's not simple, it's not easy, it's a little more advanced, it's a little more involved, there's a little bit more to it. University math is more complicated than junior high school math. I think we can all understand that. There's just more to think about and more potential for mistakes too if things are complicated.
Indeed. For myself, for example, I came to the studio this morning by taking the green line and then transferring at Ximen to the blue line. I could have taken the brown line to Nanjing Fuxing, but the change there is so complicated. You have to go down this long escalator and then walk through another large room and then down another set of stairs to the platform. That's quite complicated, so I avoided that and just made a simple transfer at Ximen Station this morning when I was on my way to the office. And that's sort of what the man is suggesting to Stan. Yeah, you could take the underground, but you'd have to transfer from one line to another. That's kind of complicated, especially if you're a tourist. It could get confusing for you. You might get lost. And he also says you could get there by bus, which sounds like a lot of fun. They've got those double-decker buses in London. But here the man says, I'm not exactly sure about the best bus route. This person may not be from that part of the city, so they're not quite sure which bus route to take, or that person does not often take the buses, and so he's not familiar with the route. Route here just refers to where the bus actually goes on a fixed route or a fixed series of streets and turns and things like that. So, of course, in Taipei and Kaohsiung and Taichung, you have different bus routes.
All right, so you might have to ask somebody else, says this man, kind of saying, I'm not sure, I don't live in that area, I don't take that bus very often, so I know that should be the right one to take, but you'll probably need to ask the bus driver, maybe someone on the bus. They will clearly know a bit more about the bus's route and, you know, things like that. But anyways, this is definitely helping Stan out, getting him 75% of the way there, and he knows how to finish off the journey by just getting a bit more information once he gets to the bus. So Stan says, thank you for the information. So he's got an underground way of getting there. He knows he can get a bus there. He can walk, of course, if he wants. So there you go. I think that man did a good job of getting Stan back on track.
And Stan is grateful. Thank you for your information. And hopefully Stan can get to the museum without any problems. Okay, let's go on to the second conversation here. Stan is actually having some trouble using the buses in London. He's actually waiting at the wrong bus stop. Let's find out what happens now. Let's listen.
2. Waiting at the wrong bus stop. Someone suggests that Stan take the number 24 bus, so he walks to a bus stop and looks at the bus map. Then he checks with a woman waiting next to him. Excuse me, I'm trying to take the number 24 bus to the British Museum, but I'm not sure if this is the correct stop.
Oh, this is Westminster Abbey Stop X, and the number 24 doesn't stop here. You'll have to go to Westminster Abbey Stop R and take it from there.
Thank you. Could you show me the way to that stop?
Absolutely. Just go to the junction there and take a left. You should see it in front of you.
Thanks so much.
第二部分我们看到副词 absolutely 这个字指的是当然、没错、完全的或是绝对的。例如 Are you planning to go to the concert tomorrow night? Absolutely. 你有计划要去明晚的音乐会吗？当然。或是 It's absolutely necessary to visit the museums if you're going to New York. 如果你要去纽约，参观博物馆是一定要的。另外，这个字去掉字尾 ly 就会变成形容词 absolute， 它的意思是绝对的或是肯定的。像是 The dog has absolute freedom of the house, so it can go in any room. 那只狗在屋内完全自由，所以它可以进入任何房间。又或者是 Members of the club are sworn to absolute secrecy. 这个俱乐部的成员发誓要绝对保密。最后我们看到名词 junction， 意思是交叉路口，或是公路或铁路枢纽，也可以是河流的汇合处。我们可以说 The restaurant is at the junction of two main roads. 那个餐厅位于两条主要道路的交接处。
Okay, so remember Stan was debating whether he should take the underground or the bus to the British Museum. It seems that he has chosen to take the bus. Someone suggests that Stan take the number 24 bus. So, of course, like Taipei here, they have different numbered bus routes. So he walks to the bus stop and looks at the bus map. Remember, if you want to get on a bus that's on its route, we go to the bus stop. But if you want to take a bus to a location that's farther away, if you want to take a long-distance bus, then that would be the bus station. So the bus stop, of course, is next to the road, and the bus station is at the end of a line, usually for long-distance buses. But here he's at the bus stop, and he looks at the bus map, and then he checks with the woman waiting next to him. There's a woman there, and he decides to ask her some questions.
All right. So let's find out what's going on here. Now, Stan says, excuse me, I'm trying to take the number 24 bus to the British Museum, but I'm not sure if this is the correct stop. So here he is. He's getting on his way to the British Museum. He's decided to take the bus, so he's not sure if this is the correct stop. And it seems that he is a little bit off. He might be near the right place, but he's a little bit off because the woman says, oh, this is Westminster Abbey stop X, and the number 24 doesn't stop here. Westminster Abbey is very close to the Houses of Parliament and not far from Whitehall and the Buckingham Palace. It's a busy central area of London. A lot of bus routes probably go through there. So he's nearby, but not quite the stop. The woman says you'll have to go to Westminster Abbey stop R and take it from there. So not stop X, look for stop R. That is the bus you want to get to the British Museum.
Stan says, well, thank you. Could you show me the way to that stop? Could you tell me how to get to stop R? And the woman says, absolutely. And that, of course, is a polite thing to say. If you're willing to help somebody out, they ask you for directions. Could you tell me how to get to the British Museum? Where's that bus stop? Can you tell me? Or could you tell me? That's more polite. And the woman says, absolutely, which means 100% no problem. I'm more than happy to help.
All right, there you go. So absolutely, she points down the street. You can imagine her, using her arm, maybe extending a finger to show him the direction to go. Just go to the junction there and take a left. You should see it in front of you. All right, so that's not too far because you can see where to go, and it's a crossroads or a junction. A junction is where two roads meet. We could call that a crossroads, generally if it's two roads making a cross-like shape, and there's a few other words for it. But basically, if someone is telling you go to a junction, you're going to a place where at least two roads will meet, so that will clearly be a place where you can turn left or right or keep going straight. In this case, you're going to turn left, take a left. You could also say turn left or something like that. So then you should see it in front of you. So if you turn left, you'll be on a new street, obviously, and the stop should be right there in front of you. It's not hard to find.
Indeed. And of course, when you give someone directions, you need to tell them where they should turn left, where they should turn right, etc., etc. And again, a junction, as Mike said, is where two roads cross each other. For me, the word junction is often used in the countryside, at least where I'm from, the junction of Highway 9 and Highway 4, for example. If you're in town or in a city, we tend to use the word intersection. If somebody asks you for directions here in Taipei, like, where's the MRT station? Well, it's at the intersection of Fuxing North Road and Nanjing East Road. You can't miss it. It's right there. It's at that intersection. So indeed, these are some instructions or some directions that the woman is giving the man. I should also mention that Stan is in London, and it might be confusing as to where the bus stops because they drive on the left in England like they do in Thailand and Indonesia and Japan and places like that. So he may have gotten on the wrong bus because he was simply on the wrong side of the street. That's my educated guess. Okay, that brings us to the end of our explanation for today. Let's hear from Hanny now.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny。 我们来看今天的文法重点。 在课文第一部分的对话里 Stan 要去大英博物馆，他向街上一名男子问路，那么对方说用走的大约需要30分钟。 Stan 觉得自己会在博物馆里面一直走来走去，他就说So I'd prefer to avoid that， 所以我宁愿避免走路。好，那这边我们来整理一下 prefer 的用法。动词 prefer 它表示更喜欢或是偏好，那么之后可以接不定词、名词或是动名词，像 Tina prefers to shop online， 或者是你可以说 Tina prefers shopping online。 Tina 她偏好线上购物。好，那现在如果我们是要比较两者的偏好，去表达说比较喜欢 A 而非 B， 比较喜欢什么而不是什么，更喜欢什么胜过什么，我们来看看有几个常见的句型。第一个你可以用 prefer A to B， 那这个句型里面的 A 和 B 必须用名词或动名词，例如 Some people prefer texting to talking in person， 有些人更喜欢传讯息胜过当面讲话。好，那第二个你可以用prefer to 动词 rather than 动词，像这样举例来说 I prefer to read books rather than watch TV， 我比较喜欢看书而不是看电视。那注意 rather than 后面接的是原形动词咯。好，再看到第三个句型是 prefer to 动词 instead of 动词 ing， 注意 instead of 后面接的是动名词，例如Dave prefers to stay at home instead of going to a party. Dave 比较喜欢待在家，而不是去参加派对。好，那在课文第二部分的对话里面 Stan 他在错误的公车站牌等车，那他向旁边等车的女子确认，对方在跟他说明正确站牌的方向时，就有说Just go to the junction there and take a left， 只要走到那边的交叉路口，然后左转。好 junction 当名词可以用来指连结点，或是枢纽，或是汇合处，可能可以指公路或铁路的枢纽啊，河流的汇合处等等。不过它在对话里面是指交叉路口。好，那我们顺便补充一下 junction 的字根。当我们看到 join，Join 或者是 junked Junct 这一类的字根它带有连接的意思，那么 junction 就是由 junked 表示连接，再加上名词字尾 ion 而来的。我们再补充两个有这类字根的单字，第一个是 adjunct adjunct， 它的字首 ad 表示朝向，那么 junct 表示连接。那同学们可以试着想象，把某物朝向另一个物品连接上去，用这样来联想说 adjunct 它表示附属物或者是附件的意思。第二个补充的是 conjoin， 它的字首 con 表示一起，那么 join 表示连接，把它合在一起 conjoin 就可以表达结合、联合，或者是使结合、使联合，它就有及物和不及物的用法。好，以上是今天重点整理，我们回顾今天单字吧。
Pace. The security guard paced around the bank's lobby. Transfer. Maud transferred from a train to a bus in Atlanta. Complicated. The math problem was too complicated for the 4th grade students. Route. Timothy drives the same route to work every weekday. Absolutely. Absolutely, said Doris when asked if she would host the meeting.
Well, that brings us to the end of another edition of our program, and please make sure you join us again next time. From all of us here, I am Mike.
I am Roger. See you next time.